Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Lieberland Show. I'm your host, Adam J. Carswell, today joined by the mercenary geologist himself, the legendary Mickey Fulp. Mickey, it's an honor to have you here with us today. How are you doing, and what are you looking forward to the most in our conversation?
Well, let me say it's a pleasure to join you, Adam. I've never been called legendary before. I've been called famous, but I've always insisted I'm infamous. Um, so, yeah, good to talk to you.
Happy to have you here. And guys, I got to know Mickey personally a little over a month ago in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. We were at a conference together, and I've shared with multiple people now, Mickey, since meeting you and some of the other individuals there. It's kind of funny to me, coming from a commercial real estate background, a term that you hear often is hard money. And hard money in the world of real estate is more so, I guess you could call it hard currency in reality. And hanging out with you and other individuals in British Columbia, I began to realize, you guys refer to your sector, the precious metal sector, as hard money. And I thought to myself, you know what, that's interesting because that's actually true. Like, this is real hard money that we're talking about here. So I thought that was
Yeah, and so
pretty
I would
interesting.
restrict that to gold. Gold is hard money. Gold's been hard money since the onset of civilization, socialization, if you will, of mankind. Um, and we got some other precious metals, but most of those are, the other three are mainly industrial metals. They can have some um, monetary value in that the fact that they can retain their buying power, but really it's all about gold. And your point regarding real estate, I think, is well taken, but I would restrict that to farmland. So since the Renaissance, which is about 600 years, well, longer than that, 700 years now, I suppose. The world's richest families have maintained their wealth by holding three things, and that's gold, farmland, and very few people will guess the third one. First two are pretty easy, but fine art. So
That's what I was thinking.
and
Yeah,
I
fine art.
certainly own the first two.
Interesting. Any reason you haven't gone the fine art direction yet?
I'd rather collect baseball cards or something like that, I suppose.
Well,
Never really interested me.
that is
and
definitely a version.
and fine art surprises me because it is dependent on what people are able to or willing to pay for anything, and as opposed for gold and farmland, those are things that retain their value because they're of, in the case of gold, it's money. It's the only thing that is money. In the case of farmland, it produces stuff that humankind needs to survive. Fine art's
Absolutely.
not that way.
It is not. And I'm looking at I wanted to make sure I had your tagline in here correctly. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are tuned in right now, I noticed geologist. I just corrected my spelling there, Mickey. So I got mercenary geologist with GEOLOGIST. I had a little brain fart there. I had an I instead of an O. So there we go.
Usually I have to spell mercenary for people. So
yeah. Well, so on that note, I want to kind of uncover the story and your background, how you got from, where you were to where you're at. And I think mercenary geologist, that branding right there, it really pops. It really stands out. And I know from getting to know you before I could remember your actual name, that's what I was thinking, is like, this is the mercenary guy. So how did you come up with the branding there? What's the meaning behind it? And we'll go from there.
yeah. So most people think mercenary refers to a soldier, and if you look it up in the dictionary, a mercenary is someone for hire. So I spent 30 years as a practicing field geologist in the resource sector, and about 20 of that was as a geologist for hire, i.e. a mercenary. So had this in the back of my head a long time, and when I kind of left the day-to-day as a chief geologist in 2007, my first speaking appearance was in Chicago. I was asked to introduce myself, and I said, I'm the mercenary geologist, and yada, yada, yada. And people laughed. So I go, well, there's the tag right there. And so that's what 15 years later, and it's been good to me. So hard to forget, I suppose.
Yeah, and I'm taking a look at your Twitter feed right now too, which I find very impressive. You know, getting to know you, you strike me as maybe a little bit more of an old school guy or an old school approach to this world of technology, but you're pretty up to date with your Twitter. It's good to see.
Yeah, we're very active on Twitter, and I appreciate the compliment there. You know, we tweet quite often. I'm looking at my Twitter page right now, and of course, and we started in the early days of Twitter in March of 2010. We chose Twitter as the only social media platform we wanted to be active on, although we've got dummy accounts for the most part on Facebook at all. But 16,400 tweets, so we tweet generally every day, 48,000 followers, and it's stuff that interests me. So I'm obviously a fan of the St. Louis Blues and the St. Louis Cardinals.
I see that.
We tweet about geology. We tweet about libertarianism, and that's where we met at a libertarian symposium that I spoke at. So we tweet about that. We tend to be fairly political. We support the idea of less government. You know, I'm a Austrian economist, or an amateur Austrian economist, I should say. So supply side sort of economics, and considering what's going on with the world right now and the U.S. government, we're pretty active on that front too. And if you scroll down my website, you'll learn very quickly that I love to fish. And I've actually spoken at some hunting and fishing shows where I basically work to fish. So it gets me places where my work historically has got me places that I can go fishing at the end of a job or before a job or whatever. And a couple of weeks ago, I guess 3 weeks ago, I landed my biggest fish ever, a 300-pound, 8-foot sturgeon.
Wow.
On the Fraser River, about 30 kilometers from downtown Vancouver. So,
wow.
Yeah, upriver, directly upriver, the Fraser River. So, yeah, biggest fish ever. So my previous best was a 160-pound fish. And so if Twitter will let you scroll down far enough, you'll see that fish on my website.
Yeah, I'm going to do some digging here. I guess I'm curious to know. I've only done a little bit of fishing throughout my life. How do you reel in? Because I met you. You're definitely not 300 pounds. How do you reel in a 300-pound fish?
Well, you got to have good equipment. So we've got a guide that we hire when the fishing's good out of Coquitlam, which is upriver from Vancouver. And they've got their right equipment. So you're fishing with very heavy-duty rod and reel, 160-pound braided line, 320-pound leaders, 14-aught circle hooks. And then the battle's on, and you strap on what we euphemistically call the mangina, which is a belt that you stick your rod butt into, and the fight's on. So I went with my fishing buddy, Dan Stewart, and we've gone before, and it actually took us both to land that fish. I hooked it and reeled on it for 15 so minutes, and he took the last 15 minutes. We had to chase it with a boat. It was dragging our boat along, upriver, despite the strong current and being anchored. We pulled anchor because I was about ready to get spooled. We had, I think, around 300 yards of this heavy braided line, and I'm yelling at the boatman, I'm about ready to get spooled, and he pulled in the anchor, and we went chasing the fish, and we eventually got it to the beach and measured it and released it.
Wow. Yeah, I did. Now that I'm looking at your page here, I think I did find the picture. So guys, make sure you go follow Mickey on Twitter. It's Mercenary Geo on Twitter.
Yep.
So one thing that you shared at the conference that we got to meet at that still kind of burns in my mind, and I don't even know if it was necessarily a part of, I don't think it was your main focus, but it just happened to be the one thing that stood out to me the most. And I think we even talked about it at the picnic afterwards, which is this concept of global cooling, which as a young whippersnapper, I didn't even know that was, what they used to say back in the day. Now they obviously turned the narrative, and everyone's ruining the world now, and it's global warming. But I found it really interesting to know that back then the public narrative was global cooling, and it's just interesting to see how.
Yeah, that was from 1965 to 1975. That was the crisis that was sure to come. So I gave a talk at this symposium. It's a bit of a mouthful. I love alliteration. So the title of it was Modern Day Malevolence, Malfeasance, and Malpractice by the Malthusian Mob. And it's about a 2,000-word essay, think piece is what we call them. And that's available for free on my website on the musings page.
Awesome. So Mickey, when was that moment for you when you started realizing that, or maybe for you, maybe you've just always been this way too? I know for me, there was a few things that transpired in my life before I started questioning this system that we've kind of been placed into. So when would you say your contrarian views first started to change your life?
Well, that's a good way to put it, because I'm a contrarian in the stock market, and I started thinking for myself, who knows exactly when. My mom always said that Mickey is his own man, so which means I think for myself. The first time I can remember for sure was I had just turned 6 years old, and I was eavesdropping from the hallway, and I heard my mom telling one of her friends about hiding Easter eggs and the stuff that kids, all that bad chocolate we used to get for Easter, and the Easter bunny and all that sort of crap. And I realized that Easter bunny wasn't real. Now, I'd already figured out that the tooth fairy wasn't real, because I would fake, when you're a little kid and you lose your baby teeth. And back in the day, and I don't know if I doubt if they still do it, but your parents would come in, you put the tooth under your pillow, and in the middle of the night they'd come in and replace that tooth with a silver mercury dime. And right. So I'd wake, I'd fake being asleep because I wanted one of those dimes. And it's kind of funny, I now own a couple of bags of junk silver, so I have lots of those mercury dimes. But so then I started thinking, well, if I know the tooth fairy's not for real, and now I just figured out the Easter bunny's not for real, and so logic and reason demands that Santa Claus wasn't real either. And that was a bit devastating. That was major, because that's who brought you the plastic army men with a guy, and including one with a bazooka, so you can play with your little 3-inch army figurines and your Schwinn bicycles when you were 5 years old, and etc. So I immediately became a skeptic. And I'm basically an optimist. So a skeptical optimist, I guess is what
I
I
like
am.
that.
And, yeah, and so that continued on. And then it was really cemented when I was around 12. Now, I realize I grew up in the Ozarks of Missouri, and the Bible Belt, and I was raised a Southern Baptist, but I had this Sunday school teacher I didn't like, but she insisted that I believe that Jonah got swallowed by a whale and puked up on a beach, no worse for wear, and that was a bit much. So at that point, I shed my religion, I shed belief. In fact, I refuse to use the word belief in all its various forms, noun, verbs, adjectives, etc.
Interesting.
And I reject faith, belief, and dogma for science, reason, and logic. I'm a Missourian, and my favorite author, of course, is Mark Twain, and he says, faith is believing what you know ain't so. And so I'm from Missouri, and you got to show me.
Yeah.
And from then on, I've questioned everything. And if you can't see it, feel it, touch it, reason it, smell it, taste it, then it comes into the idea of faith and belief, and I have none.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I like, your approach there on shedding the word belief from your vocabulary and how you choose to interpret faith does show that you are putting a lot of what I would consider valuable thought into your perception of reality, which that's really what it comes down to, is your awareness. How do you view right from wrong? Is there a right and wrong in the first place? So I love that view. I've actually never heard anyone share it the way you just did. So
yeah, well, it's I've spoken about it at the symposium previous years. I've spoken about it. The title of a talk, and also my musings, my newsletter is one of them is the Fallacy of Belief. Yes, Virginia, there is no Santa Claus. The other word I refuse to use, except in very specific cases, is perfect. Now, perfect is used way too much, and if you really look at it, there's very few things that are perfect in the world. I was a baseball player for a long, long time. You competitive baseball player, you can pitch a perfect game. You can bowl a perfect game in bowling. You can get a perfect score on a true-false test. There's very few other things that are perfect, so I generally will not use the word perfect except in the above referenced cases.
It's so interesting to me that you say that too, because I was just in an email thread with someone who I responded to them, said something, and they emailed me back and they said perfect. Like I can still see it in my mind right now.
No. And I've actually written about that. If you go on my website to the musings page, and you can do things like Control F, and you type in a word. So type in fallacy, type in perfect. One time I had a meeting.
Oh, looks like we lost Mickey there on his phone, so we will wait for him to rejoin us, I guess. This interview is pretty close to it, but it's not a perfect interview, right? Or maybe we'll find the perfection in the imperfection. Hang on, ladies and gentlemen, while we bring Mr. Fulp back in here to close this one out. All righty, we're back. Looks like we had a quick little power surge there, but Mickey is back here on the line with us. So, Mickey, we were talking about the word perfect and how you've done. I think you said you wrote an essay on it.
I did, and it's called The Fallacy of Believing in Perfect. And it happened, I was in a meeting with a guy, and for some reason we started talking about that Journey song, Don't Stop Believing. So I wrote a thing about that, never start believing, or don't start believing, something like that. So anyway, So that's available on the website too. I think that was in 2017, 2019,
Okay.
sometime 2018. Hard to
Awesome.
remember. We lost a year and a half with the so-called pandemic.
Right. Yeah. Whatever that nonsense was. Um, so
Exactly.
yeah, but Mickey, could you tell our audience? I'll never forget one thing you shared with me too, when we were hanging out in person was, and it was a very subtle, very humble way, but you were basically like, I've made a lot of people millionaires, or I've made a lot of people wealthy with what I do. So could you just share a little bit about what you do and what you're working on right now?
Yeah. So for the last 14 years or so, I've been a mining analyst, speaker, writer, and written a newsletter. Basically, a lot of it is financial, and we historically have played the junior resource sector, companies listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange, a lot of those based in Vancouver, and pick stocks, and you pick them at the right time, and we have a criteria. We want to double in 12 months or less. So this is very high risk, high reward, gambling money, if you will. And we've been quite successful doing that. And, through bear markets, bull markets, and yeah. So I've
Yeah.
generally got some stock picks out there. I don't have any at present because of this deep bull market that we're in across the board worldwide. I think recession's coming. So if I had any advice for people right now, I'll just tell you what I do. I don't give it advice, but we talked a bit about it at the beginning, and that's buy precious metals, buy gold. Gold in
Hmm.
your physical possession is a safe haven against economic collapse, financial calamity. If you own gold, you'll be rich. You're rich, and if you don't use it in your lifetime, you'll make your children and your grandchildren, your progeny, uh, take care of them for their lives. So,
Hmm.
and the other thing is always looking to buy productive farmland, and I've got a couple of places I live, New Mexico and Missouri, and some in Vancouver, and so farmland in the Ozarks of Missouri is pretty hard to beat right now.
Yes, yes, and that is definitely something I've observed as well. I know we talked about that briefly at the beginning too, but the acquisition of farmland or owning it and maintaining it is definitely something I've observed many of the world's most wealthy people pursuing right now. And so for everyone who's tuned in right now, and even a reminder to myself as I probably get ready to buy a farm here in the foreseeable future, it sounds like it's a good way to go. And make sure you couple that with gold and a couple baseball cards, and you'll be set.
Mickey Mantles.
There you go. There you go. All right, Mickey. Well, thank you so much for spending your time with us, investing your time with the listeners here at the Lieberland Show. And to our listeners, thank you as well for investing your most valuable resource, your time. Mickey, what is the best place or best way for our listeners to follow up and get in touch with you?
Yeah, if they want to get a personal response, contact at mercenarygeologist.com. We run a free website, free newsletter for the most part, somewhat restricted to subscribers, but you can go on the website, mercenarygeologist.com. Below my mugshot, click, and it'll take you to a page that'll get you access to some of the recent restricted stuff, and follow us on Twitter at mercenarygeo. We have a lot of fun there, but Twitter's a one-way thing for us, so we put it out there. Do not expect a response from anything you reply to us on Twitter. We do that strictly via email.
Perfect. Perfect.
Not in the public venue, my friend.
You know what? I just said perfect. I gotta practice that. It is maybe not necessarily perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, thank you very much, Mickey. And guys, again, his email is the best way to get in touch. That is contact at mercenarygeologist.com, and we'll put the other links in the show notes as well. Mickey, thank you again, and I look forward to our next encounter.
Okay. I'll do one little plug here. I will be speaking at the New Orleans Investment Conference
Oh, nice.
on October 12th through 15th. I'm a commodities talking head. I'm speaking about natural gas, and mid-October in the Big Easy is hard to beat. So lots of food and drink and fun, and a collection of libertarian-leaning people.
Yes, yes, I'm familiar with the New Orleans Investment Conference and have only heard good things. So that's great to hear you'll be there. My firstborn is due very soon here, so I'll probably see you
Yeah.
at a future one.
Yeah, we talked about that. It was a pleasure to meet you and your lovely wife in Vancouver.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mickey. Again, this has been great. Thank you for that extra plug there, guys. Don't forget you can catch Mickey at the New Orleans Investment Conference. And this is it for the Lieberland Show. I'm Adam J. Carswell, your host. We were joined today by Mickey Fulp of mercenarygeologist.com. Thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you in the next episode.